Could I first of all ask people to mute their microphone, just so that we don't get any background interference? And then obviously, if you want to contribute later on, you'll need to unmute yourself. Thank you very much. So welcome to everybody to our meeting this evening, where Susan Williams is going to be speaking to us about sharing in the field, the art of working energetically with psychedelic medicines. So first of all, welcome to Susan. Very great welcome to you. It's lovely to have you with us from so far away. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Liz Grant. I'm the chair of AJA at the moment. And in a moment, I'll be handing over to Chris Williams, who's one of our AJA members, who will be introducing Susan and also chairing the meeting. It's really good to see so many people here and from so many different places. And I just want to sort of mention some of the places where people are coming from. We've got people from California, Berkeley, Chicago, Novato, from Cannes, from Ukraine, from Germany, and of course from many different parts of the UK. So welcome to everybody. And if those of you who are not AJA members or candidates could just bear with me for a moment while I make just one or two short announcements for AJA people. Just saying, first of all, that in April, we won't be having a monthly meeting. But on next Tuesday, there is a meeting of with Ukraine Jungians, where George Hoganson and Anna Mitzik, one of our members, will be speaking. So that's something that will be next Tuesday. And then in April, there is a day conference at the Friends House in Euston Road on greening the self, which is a conference with Jungian and other perspectives. And there's one of our retired members and another member who will be facilitating this. So that's something also to look forward to. More information about that can be found from the AJA office. And lastly, not next month, but in May, on May the 7th, Cedric Bouet-Willemay will be speaking about his multilingual analysis, and there'll be more details about this coming out later. So that's the program. And now I'm going to hand over to Chris Williams. And after Susan has spoken, there'll be a time for questions, and Arthur Nisa will explain how we'll run that after she's spoken. So Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, Susan, really, really happy to have you with us again. We miss you. Anyway, this is her bio. Susan Williams is an adult and child Jungian analyst member of the C.G. Jung Institute of San Francisco. She trained in London at the Association of Jungian Analysts, and Susan currently has a private practice in Berkeley, California, where she sees adults, adolescents, and children of all ages. She has extensive experience working with children and with disabilities in hospitals, clinics, and schools, and has consulted to many Bay Area school programs for children with autistic spectrum disorders. She's published and taught both in the UK and US on topics including the numinous, the unbearable weight of truth, expanded states of consciousness, psychedelic enhanced psychotherapy, aliveness and deadness, autism, and autistic states of mind. She's completed the MAPS MDMA therapy training program and is trained in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Susan organized a conference through the San Francisco Jung Institute in 2019 entitled Encountering the Numinous, Depth Psychotherapy, Analysis, and Psychedelics, looking at the role of Jungian and depth psychotherapy in the current renaissance in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy and research. Okay, Susan, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. That was really nice. And it's actually quite special to be introduced by you. Chris and I were, in San Francisco, they call it litter mates.
Oh,
so
right.
we were litter mates, yes. together in a pod. So it really is quite special for me. And I really am happy to be here tonight and speaking to you as well, because it really does for me feel like a homecoming, being back at Asia, where I did my training surrounded by old friends and seeing familiar faces. So before I begin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my share screen. But as I'm doing that, I want to start with a piece of music that I'm just going to play a snippet of. And I may play a little snippet at different points. And the reason I'm doing this is, one is that in the work with psychedelics, another really important factor in the room and in the analytic field is the music. And the music really has a powerful impact on the work itself. So I want us to actually have an experience of music as part of the field here. And this is a song that was very important to this patient that I will be presenting. And it was an important part of our work. So I'd like to play a little bit of a snippet of it, and I will set up my share screen as I do that. So. Taken back, you don't know the kiss of sorrow. Those who would not take you in. I can't stand a stranger. You have come my way of sorrow. You have come my way of tears. But you made your dusty and to find you all these years. And to find you all these years. Okay, that was just a small little bit, but I thought I wanted to at least also just to shift the energy a little bit as well too with the music. So in December of 2023, I was part of an historic conference sponsored by Pacifica Graduate Institute in California, where I live, along with the IAP, to explore the place of psychedelics in the practice of Jungian psychoanalysis. Out of this collaboration, a book entitled Psychedelics and Individuation was launched. So what I'm going to share with you today is based on my chapter from that book. But my aim tonight with you is to take it further and to offer new clinical material and further reflections that I'm really looking forward to share, because some of this material I haven't presented before. And so it feels very fresh and alive for me. I will be exploring with you what expanded states of consciousness and a Jungian-informed psychedelic enhanced psychotherapy offers to the development of a new energetic paradigm of health and healing. This is a shift away from a focus on matter towards psychic energy, weaving ancient shamanic and visionary practices into a contemporary paradigm. This presentation will focus on accessing the psychic energy of psychedelics, particularly MDMA and psilocybin, without the patient taking the actual material substance. So before I go any further, I want to give you just the briefest of overviews on where we stand now with psychedelics, both in the US and in the UK. Over the past several years, we've witnessed what has been called a psychedelic renaissance. A growing body of evidence suggests that a number of psychedelic medicines hold strong therapeutic potential for a wide array of mental health conditions. These medicines that were once dismissed as dangerous and having little therapeutic potential are really gaining mainstream acceptance. The term psychedelic was coined in the 1950s by the psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond, and it literally means mind manifesting. Several US states and cities are in the process of legalizing or decriminalizing psychedelics like psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, and others for therapeutic and some even for recreational purposes. In your own backyard at Imperial College London, the Imperial Center for Psychedelic Research is leading a clinical trial to develop psilocybin therapy into licensed treatment for depression. They're also doing some really interesting work on the neuroscience. And in fact, one of the main researchers, Robin Carhart-Harris, is now in San Francisco. So anyways, so in the US, the FDA has shown interest in prioritizing the approval of both psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy for major depressive disorder, as well as MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD. These treatments have been given, they've been given what they call breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA, which means that it will fast track the approval process because of the growing clinical evidence demonstrating substantial improvement over currently available therapies. MDMA-assisted psychotherapy is the psychedelic treatment closest to receiving FDA approval. And it's finished 2 phase 3 clinical trials for patients with severe and chronic PTSD. All the participants completed a 12-week treatment program, which was composed of 3 full days during which they received either MDMA or a placebo, plus weekly non-drug psychotherapy sessions. 2 months after treatment in the first phase 3 trial, 67% of the MDA cohort no longer qualified for the PTSD diagnosis, compared with 32% of the placebo group. In the second phase 3 trial, 2 months after the third MDMA session, 71.2% of the participants lost their diagnosis. And if you know anything about clinical trials, that's really kind of like unheard of results, actually. And so it's really been really heartening. So now let me tell you a bit about MDMA, which is also known as ecstasy or Molly. MDMA is what we call an empathogen. It's unique its ability to promote acceptance of and empathy for oneself and for others. In addition to elevating oxytocin levels, MDMA stimulates the release of monoamines serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine, resulting in an improved mood and increased sociability. There's also a decrease of amygdala activation and a reduced fear response. And therefore, why it's so helpful is it really allows the patient then to emotionally engage in therapy without becoming overwhelmed by anxiety or difficult emotions. So this combination of medication plus psychotherapy represents a whole new frontier for the FDA. So now what I'd like to do is to be able to share my own idiosyncratic window into this world. This talk is really an outgrowth of a strange yet transformative exploration of what psychedelic plants and medicines are trying to communicate. Is something radically unfamiliar trying to break through? In the words of D.H. Lawrence, what is the knocking? What is the knocking at the door in the night? Is it somebody wants to do us harm? No, no, it is 3 strange angels. Admit them, admit them. There is no way to soften the fact that the story I'm going to share with you here is a radical story that challenges many of our culture's deepest convictions about reality. Christopher Bache, a professor emeritus in philosophy and religious studies, wrote this quote as an epigraph to his book documenting his 20-year psychedelic exploration, revealing a repeating spiral of death and rebirth experiences, initiating him into deeper layers of what he calls deep time. I share this quote as I recognize that I am stepping out on an edge. What I have to say this evening may challenge some of our assumptions of reality. I will be sharing both some personal experiences that I hold as sacred, but more importantly, an unusual clinical case. While I have permission to present this material, I ask that you hold it in a way that respects its integrity, for this is an analysis still in progress. Ever since the first humans went into space, astronauts have come home to describe what they called the overview effect. The profound change that occurs when they see the world from above as a place where borders are invisible, where economic, racial, and class disparity do not exist, and where the Earth appears alive and pulsating. As Apollo 14 astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell peered out the window of his space capsule with 360-degree panoramic view of the stars, the moon, our planet, and the vastness of the cosmos, he suddenly experienced a deep sense of interconnection, a powerful feeling that he was an intricate part of everything he was observing. It was an experience unlike anything he had encountered previously in his life, and it transformed his perception, not only of Earth, but of himself, humanity, and of humanity's potential. Essentially, it changed his life. The work with psychedelic plants and medicines has radically changed my perspective, gracing me with a kind of overview effect, and with what has been for me an epiphany, where the boundaries that separate you and I, or subject and object, inner or outer, or mind, spirit, and matter all disappear. This work has changed the way I engage with all my patients, including those who have never taken or never will take a psychedelic substance. I can no longer compartmentalize or pretend to see anything as truly separate from the whole. Psychedelic medicines open one to a reality that the Neoplatonic philosopher Plotinus illuminates when he writes, "Everything in the world is full of signs. All events are coordinated. All things depend on each other. Everything breathes together." This is a quantum worldview that physicists like John Archibald Wheeler, who coined the term black hole, described as an interconnected participatory universe, a universe in which there is no objective reality out there independent of an observer, where the questions we ask make a difference, and where the laws of physics are not written in stone, but are mutable. This is a world view that mirrors what the ancients described in Hermetic maxims like as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. The art of working energetically with psychedelic medicines is my attempt at co-dreaming with the plants and entities while honoring the dreamlike nature of reality. One question I will explore here is, can we work collaboratively in the field as an energetic mycelial network, or as they call it, the World Wide Web? Just as this vast, dazzling hyphal system in a forest allows the sharing of nutrients between trees and plants, there may be an energetic equivalent in the field between human and non-human beings. How do we share our gifts and identify our shadows and complexes that may block the flow within us and between us? I will explore this question and others through a clinical case that demanded an expanded orientation toward wholeness and meaning. What I am calling sharing in the field is a paradigm challenging the Newtonian view of a solo self, leading one into a shared, co-created, energetic field of consciousness. The first lesson on my journey beyond the constraints of consensus reality toward a more expansive cosmic consciousness emerged with the plant teacher Yahe, which is the ayahuasca vine, in the Amazonian jungle, accompanied by the elders of the Sicope Nation of Ecuador. An ayahuasca ritual, as some may know, begins with weeks of preparation, including cleansing and purging rites, as one sits around a fire in the nocturnal forest. During the subsequent all-night ceremonies, separated by days of rest, I was safely guided by the tribal elders through uncharted terrain as they sang their icaros, or songs of healing and magic, in a language taught to them by the spirits. Over the weeks, the energy built from ceremony to ceremony, and I had the sense that I was learning to deepen a relationship with the spirits of this medicine. What began as psychedelic visions of vibrant colors and figures soon shifted as I spoke directly to the medicine, saying, "With all due respect, this is amazing, but I did not come here to be wowed. I've had many amazing experiences in my life, so you don't need to impress me. I came to learn the secrets of the universe. I came to move beyond the veil, to experience something of ultimate reality." While I can hear the potential for extraordinary hubris and arrogance in that statement, I also know that those were the most truthful words I knew in that moment. What startled me most was that the moment those words were spoken, the entire psychedelic light show simply just disappeared, as if a light switch was turned off, and I was in the presence of a teacher guiding me. It was the first of these visions and teachings that I received that I want to share with you today, as it set me on this path. As I was lying on my mat, I turned my head and my eyes focused on a water bottle, a really just ordinary kind of plastic container placed under the hammock of a fellow participant. In this vision, I saw with absolute clarity what I would call, as a separate individual, supposedly, would call my thoughts floating in the water bottle, bottle belonging to the other participant. And I thought, how can this be? How can my thoughts be bottled up in such an insignificant plastic container and in a vessel that isn't even mine? This paradigm-shattering vision was shocking as I pondered the improbability of my supposedly personal thoughts contained in a bottle I didn't even own. This realization emerged. Oh, none of this belongs to us. I may bottle up my thoughts like water into a separate kind of mind bottle and call it me or my idea, but that is illusory. Thoughts may be more like water and in the ocean flowing between continents. And so what we call mine and yours ultimately all belongs to the vast cosmic sea.
Yeah.
The water bottle experience illustrated for me that our consciousness and our thoughts do not reside inside a brain or even a physical body, but in an energetic or electrical field that allows for a kind of mind-to-mind transmission, or what again I am calling sharing in the field. I want to offer you a view beyond all the old models, beyond the workings of the default mode network, which is the region of the brain that structures our sense of a separate egoic identity, beyond all constructs that tell us who and what we are not and what is possible. My shattering water bottle experience, which was the seed of this new energetic paradigm of healing without the use of a material substance, points to an underlying reality. Let's make sure it doesn't work here. There it goes. Underlying reality that is neither mental nor material, to what Jung and the physicist Wolfgang Pauli call unus mundus, or one world. What I am reaching toward is a mystical worldview that the ancient Greeks described in the Orphic tradition and Eleusinian mysteries, but also through my Celtic pagan bloodline. Throughout this work, I have drawn not only from my analytic and psychedelic trainings, but more deeply from the buried wisdom of my own ancestors. Indigenous cultures have deep and complex root structures in place, informing their relationship with sacred plants and medicines. For many Westerners, there is no such anchoring tradition. The modern world has veered toward Cartesian holistic principles. You know what, I'm just gonna say that I think there's a funny noise here. Sounds like somebody's scraping. I just don't want to
May I say, Jenny, could it be you that your microphone isn't muted?
Oopsie, didn't need to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, I was just saying, yeah, the modern world is veered toward Cartesian dualistic principles where we kind of cut everything up into pieces, forgetting the non-dual sacred practices that lie at the ancient roots of Western civilization. My clinical approach of working energetically with psychedelic medicines without the patient taking the actual material substance is my attempt at reconnecting to a new yet ancient paradigm of healing within my own Irish, Celtic, and pagan cultural lineage. How do we reinfuse Newman back into our practices? How do we give birth to the primordially ancient in the new? There is a Hebrew phrase that has become a guiding mantra in this exploration. I find myself repeating the English translation. The old shall be made new and the new sacred, as I attempt to recreate a more alive and sacramental way of working with these medicines. This is not Hippocratic medicine, but an ancient shamanic world, not of rational thought, but of inspired prophecy, ecstasy, and expanded states of consciousness, of incantation, enchantment, and the deliberate repetitive use of words and song, the ritualized art of stillness and meditation. Through the incubation in dark places, the initiate deliberately accesses the realm of dreams and visions. This is a practice of waking up, not from, but actually into the dream, in the dreamlike nature of reality, where everything is a communication from the field. And I really believe it is everything. My ongoing work exploring the energetics of psychedelic medicines has suggested that in the language of quantum mechanics, I needed to become more wave than particle. Whereas a particle is a finite entity, waves are boundaryless oscillations that spread out, transporting energy from one place to another. The image of the wave-particle duality speaks to the call to rest in possibility, while tolerating living on the knife edge of nonsense, a frontier where thoughts and emotions do not reside inside a body, but rather permeate the atmosphere like weather. Max Planck, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist, wrote, "There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter." Jung's one-time patient and collaborator, Wolfgang Pauli, saw this underlying wholeness to the universe alive in synchronicities, where matter, soul, psyche, and meaning come together in surprising ways. The Pauli-Jung conjecture, which is describing that concept of synchronicity, has its lineage in a philosophy of mind called dual aspect monism, which essentially says that epistemologically, we all have a daily experience of two-ness, yet reality is actually fundamentally one. The human brain and body seem to split this unity into a duality. So as I speak to you right now, I have this experience of being a separate subject looking out at a world of objects, including each of you. But what I am wondering is, could that be an illusion? So now I want to shift, and I want to share with you how I have integrated these developments into a 14-year, twice-a-week analysis with a patient whom I call Alana. So, I'm going to, as I begin this case, what I want to do again is I'm just going to play another little snippet of the song, because what I really want to do is, as we listen to the case, I want to shift the energy. The other bit was a little headier, and so I want to shift back into the work. And I just thought the song may bring us a little more into the spirit of the work.
To iPhone 114. Connected to Susan's MacBook. Not be your comfort. You once was behind. You will be welcome and esteemed. You have come by with storm, you have come by with tears, but sure it's your destiny. Meant to find you all these years, meant to find you all these years.
Just to kind of shift the energy a little bit. So the work with my patient Alana, is the name I'm giving her, is an attempt at sharing in the energy field the potential to awaken a mysterious yet potent inner healing intelligence that has been forgotten. In Jungian language, we could call this the wisdom of the self, though I hesitate to do so, for this word, like many sacred names, has lost its potency through overuse, becoming a shorthand for something too known. Instead, I turn to Wallace Stevens when he implores in The Man with the Blue Guitar, throw away the lights, the definitions, and say of what you see in the dark, that it is this or that it is that, but do not use the rotted names. Our work represents a move away from familiar definitions, rotted names, and the security of a material worldview. This paradigm shifts us towards an energetic cosmos. Alana is in her 40s and was born with multiple congenital anomalies and visual and hearing impairment. At birth, she was presumed to be completely blind and deaf, though it became evident that she was, in fact, partially sighted. From birth until the present, Alana has undergone a seemingly endless series of surgeries, thus contributing to a fragmented identity formed through a medical lens. Alana is often met with the assumption that she is cognitively impaired because of her physical appearance. She has a very rare neurological syndrome, so it really affects all body parts. For all the work we have done over the years, residual symptoms of anxiety persisted. Her life often felt like one medical problem after another, with each procedure stirring flashbacks of being pinned down and the resultant feeling of being trapped and unable to see or hear what was happening. During the initial surge of COVID-19, Alana was shaken to her core by several losses in her family circle. Then the unimaginable happened. After a lifetime of surgeries to save her remaining vision, she lost all sight and was now completely blind. All these losses transpired as we were in a pandemic, with the phone as our only source of connection. As Alana's vision was declining quickly, she pleaded to be seen in person while she had some sight left. To fortify her recall, Alana would stare at an enlarged photo of me on her computer screen, trying to memorize my face before all vision disappeared. It was clear that I needed to make an exception to see her in person. The phrase extraordinary times calls for extraordinary measures resonated, even though I lacked a clear idea of what I was being called to do. I knew, though, that our creative aliveness required something more far-reaching, and that my own imagination needed to be set free from old paradigms and conventions. I think everybody who knew me knew that I kept saying, I have to get out of my chair. I have to get out of my chair. I knew that it was calling for something really radically new. Alana expressed interest in MDMA as a treatment for her severe anxiety and intractable symptoms of PTSD from medical trauma that left her feeling like a rare medical specimen repeatedly poked and prodded. So it was sobering to inform her that her complex history and long list of medications disqualified her from applying to any of the clinical trials and prohibited the safe use of any psychedelic substance. Having completed the MAPS MDMA therapy training program and gaining firsthand experience of what this treatment has to offer, I hoped Alana could have the opportunity to awaken her own inner healing intelligence. During this period, I woke many mornings with the same dream. It was a voice, almost a command, stating, re-infuse Newman into matter, re-infuse Newman into matter. It was insistent, and so I listened deeply. I sensed that my words, practices, and ways of relating had become dead through mindless repetition. They needed to be reinfused with fresh sparks of divine aliveness. It is a well-known fact that plasticity has been documented at every stage of life. Habit impedes us as we age as much as any change in innate capacity. The work with Alana was stuck in old habits and tired analytic rituals. A quote inspired by the work of the psychoanalyst Paul Russell emerged and became another guiding mantra. When we repeat, we cease to live. Perhaps the analysis and our relationship were not fully alive. We were repeating. But where was the enchanted repetition of poetry and song, of sacred ritual? In my countertransference, I had been struggling with a feeling of irritation, igniting an even more shameful inner response. It was like, oh my God, how could I be so cold and unfeeling after all she's been through? Over time, my irritation has become one of my wisest teachers, informing me that a hidden truth has not yet been brought to consciousness. Was my anger and irritation telling me that there was a door to a deeper layer of feeling that we needed to go through? Trauma survivors like Alana have been subject to circumstances that stir feelings beyond what the ego can metabolize, so they've had to dissociate. Dissociation is something the psyche does to protect us, to safeguard something sacred and imperishable about the human spirit by splitting off vulnerable parts into the inner world and protecting them there with defenses. These splintered off islands of unbearable truth protect the stability of the known self, though with so much locked away, they also ultimately leave us leading a very constricted life. As Alana's suffering was so overwhelming, the capacity to face into and integrate the full extent of her losses was blocked. So what I recognize is that my irritation arose whenever I arrived at a locked door. This door is the protective layer of the defenses that guards all those unmetabolized experiences that have never seen the light of day. I felt really profound sympathy for all Alana had gone through, but genuine empathy was harder to locate in those moments. And I knew that the block to true feeling flowing again would be found in the space between us, and by empathically facing into any silenced parts of the self, both hers and mine. To move forward with the energy field open for sharing, these locked away emotions needed to be more consciously expressed, clearing the field for the next stage of our work. I wanted to share with Alana not only the best of what has emerged in the research with psychedelics, but also the magic and mystery alive in these practices, the sacramental nature of what is possible in a vibrantly alive process. How could I reinfuse Newman into an analysis that had become dead and drained of spirit as I sat in my chair and listened? Native Americans and other indigenous peoples have an alive culture that honors sacramental mysteries, but where was it in my own culture, in my Celtic soul? After facing into the reality that she was unable to work with the substance of MDMA, I said, well, if you really want to work with MDMA, we can start right now. I shared my belief that the material substance of the medicine was not essential, that there was an energetic field constellated around these medicines, and we could work with that. I let Alana know that I would work with her in the exact same way I would with a patient on MDMA, but without her taking the material substance. Alana's whole life has been ruled by a reductionistic medical model that focused on repairing broken body parts at the expense of being a whole person. What I knew we needed to do was to restore a sense of underlying wholeness. So I decided that I would intuitively create a paradigm that worked for both Alana and I. We were going to work together as interacting conscious agents in a co-created field, acting more like wave than particle. I drew from what I knew best, which was my own deep dive with these medicines, which was a radically transformative experience of waking up from a long, deep sleep into a latent potential that I believe is in each of us to heal ourselves and our bodies. I was able to rewrite my own story of debilitating autoimmune, gastrointestinal, and neurological symptoms. The work with sacred medicines opened me to states of consciousness that over time allowed me to move beyond each of these limitations and to continue to live symptom-free. In an early journey, a commanding voice shouted repeatedly, "Wake up! Wake up to your effing life, Susan. If you don't do what you came here to do, you will get sick." I knew that I had to step up more fully, to inhabit a larger destiny, but also to open to any hidden areas in myself, facing all the survival adaptations that block access to the flow of grace into our lives. How could I open the field and reinfuse the sacred back into matter while helping Alana do the same? Despite a pandemic, Alana and I agreed to meet in my consulting room. She was having episodes of crippling panic. Recurring nightmares of tsunamis filled her nights. In the dream state, Alana would really attempt to kill herself to try to wake herself up. Alana had no relationship with her body, and so we began there. For her psyche, it had been a matter of surviving in pieces. But now it was time for an encounter that all that had been locked away, opening the door to a deeper integration of all these unbearably painful experiences. MDMA allows traumatic memories, which would be otherwise overwhelming and flood the psyche, to be experienced in a very deep bodily sense, with compassion and with enough perspective, which I think is important to know, is to, first of all, to have the experience and to survive the experience. A reduction in fear because of the decreased amygdala activation opens a window, a very rare moment in time, for the retrieval of split off memories to be integrated into the cells of the body-mind. I went into this experience with Alana with a sense of knowing that all of this was available to her, to us, even if she wasn't taking the material substance. I gave myself complete creative freedom to play, to make it up as I went along. I really let myself wing it. I drew on years of working with autistic children where I would try anything to make contact, knowing that they wouldn't judge me if I looked ridiculous in the process. I invoked the spirit of MDMA, drawing on my own deep inner knowing and respect for this medicine's potential to bring one into a radically new experience of the body, free and full of compassion for all it has been through, thus allowing one to rewrite old stories stored in the cells through the development of new neural pathways. In terms of set and setting, we altered our schedule to include a longer medicine session each week with an integration hour later in the week. We began with dancing, movement, yoga, and guided meditations. Lying on the floor, bathed in evocative music, Alana was able to move beyond her defenses and finally got a taste of coming home to a somatic sense of safety and peace. To contact and then share the energetic signature of MDMA, I allowed myself to tune in and intuitively become a vibrational match to this medicine, sharing with Alana the sensations of MDMA coming on as I re-experienced them in my own body. I reminded Alana, as I would a patient on the physical substance, that she couldn't do it wrong, and I suggested that she invite the medicine in. I offered what we call flight instructions. such as, there's nothing you need to do or fix here. Trust the medicine, trust the process, and let go. If you come across something scary, go towards it. Let it help you. Welcome everything. Welcome, invite, allow, and receive. Remember, there's nothing to do. It's all here now. Just let go and receive. Through this unusual process, I have come to learn about the magic of incantation, a voice, and how to draw on that instrument in a new way. Having spent decades working with distressed children, I found that if I sang rather than spoke the communication, they were better able to integrate my words. I realized that the cadence and sing-song nature of my voice in the sessions with Alana mirrored my child analytic experiences. As I regulated my breathing and entrained my own consciousness to a psychedelic state of mind, I shared this state of coherence in the field. If our thoughts are not contained in a separate physical body-mind, as my earlier water bottle vision indicated, we have the potential to synchronize and share not only viruses, but also gifts and capacities with others. What would it mean to share new information and capacities with others, just as the trees and plants share their wisdom through the vast entangled underground mycelial network? In our early sessions, fear emerged. Could Alana allow herself to be that vulnerable? Even though I am probably one of the safest people in the world to her, we had to pass slowly through this portal of safety and trust. Would even I violate her trust in these raw states? I found myself speaking slowly and calmly, using the rhythmic intention of my voice. Me speaking, I am here with you, and we will take baby steps together. We move at the speed of trust. I am reminded that I remind her that there is no agenda here, no forcing of this work, for this paradigm represented the end of the old medical model, where the doctor was the authority and she was the specimen with things done to her. Instead, this was a collaboration of interacting conscious agents in a co-created field, acting more like wave than particle. As in a traditional MDMA session, long forgotten memories sometimes emerge seemingly out of nowhere, while at other times she tuned into a painful experience from the past, noting, I've told this story so many times, but this is the first time I have actually really felt it. In those moments, I would ask her if she could stay with it, go toward the fear, just be with it, reminding her that the medicine was here to help us. I let her know that we would go there together, asking if she could let it move through her. So now I'm going to share with you one of the early medicine sessions. I'm going to share an early medicine session, and then I'm going to show a very recent psilocybin session. So this is the early MDMA session. The following session is a weaving of traditional analytic work with the introduction of non-substance MDMA into the container. Alana arrives for our weekly 2-hour medicine session, accompanied by her guide dog. She sits down and shares a dream, indicating the first kind of glimmers of some new hope. That day, she wanted to focus on a very vulnerable body part that had been a source of medical trauma and great shame as a child. Alana makes herself comfortable on the floor while sharing her fear of going into such painful memories. Her breath is off rhythm, and it's making it hard for her to speak. Excuse me. My breathing issue is saying to me, don't let go. It's too scary. We decide on a hand signal to indicate if she wants to pause or stop the process. I then inquire, again, this is all what I would do with a patient on the actual substance of MDMA, inquire whether any touching, such as like a hand on her shoulder, would be soothing if distressed. She responds, I feel like my body has been raped. I assure her that I will not touch her. As we begin a body scan meditation followed by the invocation of the medicine. Alana repeats, I'm scared. I say, Alana, can you invite the medicine in? Let it help you. She is visibly soothed by these words. Alana, I feel scared. Somebody is going to break in and try to hurt me. Where are you? Susan, moving closer. I'm right here with you. This room has double doors that are both locked, and I am here to make sure you are safe. Your dog, Teddy, is here too. Can you let this scared feeling move through you? Alana, in a pleading voice, don't let anyone touch me. Susan, I'm protecting you. I will not allow anyone to touch you. Alana, visibly soothed. I want to feel safe and healed in my body. Susan, Alana, let's say that as invocation. Alana, repeating the same words, but this time as invocation, as incantation. I am open to feeling safe and healed in my body. I am open to feeling whole and being in charge. Susan, Alana, what does your body need to hear right now? Alana, that I am whole and safe even when I'm touched. People don't intend to hurt me. The doctors and nurses were trying to help me. I can trust that I know what I need. I am open to feeling healed. I can let down my guard and trust. Susan, Alana, let your body feel the vibration of those words. Really feel the vibrational signature of each word and let it move through you. As the session was soon ending, Alana slowly got off the floor and back into her seat, taking time to settle as she was still feeling dizzy. Alana speaking, I was feeling so relaxed, yet also feeling like people were touching me. I had this odd sensation of hands all over me. All the doctors and nurses were touching me. During the procedures, they would use my body as a table. Don't they see that I'm a person? But then I imagined that I was standing in water, remembering how water is where I feel the happiest. The medicine helped me shift from the sensations of being touched to a place where I am most comfortable. As the session ends, Alana remarks, it was so helpful to be reminded that I was on medicine. I love when you say, let the medicine help you. I love lying on the floor and finally feeling so grounded. Integration and further reflections. In our follow-up integration session later that week, Alana commented on her experience of this new way of working. Alana speaking. I felt a bit dizzy and out of it all day, like I literally took the medicine. Is that possible? I affirm that this is a common experience with this medicine, for in my view, we are working with MDMA. The psychedelic enhanced psychotherapy sessions are opening Alana to expanded states of consciousness that are not a metaphor or an as-if experience, but rather a living psychic reality, an ontological reality of its own. Throughout this exploration, I have drawn not only from professional trainings, but as I have been saying, more deeply from the buried wisdom of my own ancestors. Fowla, one of the names for Dreamtime Ireland, is not a separate world, for the other world is a way of seeing this world. It is a way of being in this world. While I am no longer a practicing Catholic, Irish Catholicism, with its pagan shamanic influences, vibrates in the cells of my body. I grew up seeped in the experience of the sacrament of the Mass as a transmutation, a transubstantiation, a mystery. In the Catholic Mass, communion is not a metaphor. It is the body and blood of Christ and considered a living reality. Yet the ancient Celtic roots which I call upon in this work run much deeper than the Catholic Mass. What I beckon is primordial, eternal, feminine, and watery. an indwelling presence able to share her gifts of the heart, alchemizing the pain of those who suffer. So going forward, the energetics of psilocybin. Once again, we had come to the end of a road. Working energetically with MDMA had allowed the processing of many traumatic, painful memories, opening a door for Alana to a flow of oxytocin and love for herself, her body, and all that she had been through. As we passed through the agonies of emergent consciousness, deeper questions, though, of meaning arose. Despite all the gains, she began to reflect more honestly on the fuller meaning of her life, questioning whether she wanted to continue to live in such a state. Was there any pleasure or enjoyment left in life without vision? Everything was just so hard. Was it time for something new? Existential questions of meaning, such as, why would a loving God create me this way? Why should one person have to deal with so much? All required an expanded view of meaning and wholeness. Because from a really subjective point of view, there are no satisfactory answers to these profound inquiries. So we needed to engage in a spiritual process that could uncover a deeper layer of objective cosmic reality. To descend further, I called upon the spirit of psilocybin for guidance. Psilocybin, which is the psychedelic substance in magic mushrooms, has been well documented in studies at Johns Hopkins University to ease existential anxiety in people with life-threatening illness. Most participants in this study rated the experience to be among the top 5 most personally meaningful and spiritually significant of their life, up with, often like the birth of their child. And I wanted Alana to have a glimpse into an expanded dimension of consciousness and meaning beyond all the personal hardships and limitations of space-time reality. How can Alana live a full life between the world of trauma with unbearable pain and suffering and the realm of the numinous? And how is it possible without either world used as an escape from the other? If, as ancient wisdom teaches, the individual and cosmic soul are one, then in my mind, the real potential in psychedelic enhanced psychotherapy lies in a bridging of transcendence with immanence, a relinking of wave and particle, of spirit and matter, a remembering of our undivided wholeness. Introducing a new medicine into the analytic container requires stepping out on an edge as we learn together how to receive its wisdom without either one of us ingesting the material substance. This phase represents another shift away from a medical model of using medicines toward relating to them, honoring their sacred knowledge. This is a relational cosmology which recognizes the plants as intelligent entities, as living conscious beings, and that right relationship with the plants, other beings, ourselves, and the planet is integral to health and healing. Actually, this is something I feel quite strongly about when people talk about using medicines, and I often say, I don't want to be used and I don't want to use other people, and so I don't use medicines. I have a relationship to them. So since going completely blind, Alana had been struggling with visual, auditory, and tactile hallucinations that were brought on by a rare neurological syndrome that happened when she completely lost all sight. So rather than viewing the hallucinations as yet another disturbing symptom to be treated, we decided to work with the messages coming through these experiences as if on the actual substance of psilocybin. I think there's something I really want to note is that Alana had absolutely no knowledge of either MDMA or psilocybin prior to our work. So it was both startling and illuminating to discover how her experiences mirror many of my own medicine journeys. This calls to mind the work of Rupert Sheldrake on morphic resonance. His theory of morphic fields and morphic resonance poses that memory is inherent in nature, and that most of the so-called laws of nature are more like habits, and that the collective unconscious only makes sense in the context of some notion of collective memory. Morphic resonance teaches that each individual inherits a memory from the past members of the species and also contributes to collective memory. It enables, or essentially enables, memories to pass across both space and time from the past. So one example of morphic resonance would be when a rat in one part of the world learns a new trick, rats all over the world learn it more quickly. Or the same can be said for crystals. If you make a new compound and crystallize it, there won't be a morphic field the first time, but therefore it'd be very hard to crystallize because there's no field. But the second time, even if you do it somewhere else in the world, there'll be an influence from that first crystallization, and it should crystallize a bit more easily, and so on and so on. So if there is a memory in nature and in the field, then also memories of new capacities for healing may create new pathways that others can step into. Just as the first person skiing down a slope of freshly powdered snow creates a pathway so that others can follow more easily. This makes me wonder, does our inner work make it easier for others to do something similar through the field? My early water bottle experience taught me that my thoughts don't belong to me, while the subsequent teachings have suggested that memory too may not belong to us alone. The debilitating symptoms that I was able to work through with the assistance of plant medicine was a powerful reminder to me that we may carry memories of past events in our DNA and in the cells of our body that originated with those who come before. In fact, there's some really interesting research with somebody called Rachel Yehuda from Mount Sinai in New York, where they're looking at the intergenerational transmission of trauma, literally passed on through the DNA with the descendants of Holocaust survivors. So in Alana's recent psilocybin journeys, the ancestors have appeared, along with a reliving of the womb experience. Yet what I find most notable is the emergence of a repeating pattern of a painful death followed by a rebirth. Throughout time, mystical teaching traditions teach that to know God or ultimate reality, one must unlearn everything that the ego has been manufacturing since infancy. The mystic knows that the most effective way to recover an awareness of one's full identity in this lifetime is to die to ourselves. The ancient feminine mysteries at Eleusis were an opportunity to taste immortality, to enter the underworld, to make contact with the departed ancestors and the otherwise invisible gods and goddesses, thus revealing to the initiate that if you die before you die, you won't die when you die. Or in the words of Rumi, if you can get rid of yourself just once, the secrets of secrets would open to you. When Roland Griffin and his team at Johns Hopkins published their landmark study, which I mentioned earlier, that end-of-life anxiety study in 2006 in the Journal of Psychopharmacology, it suggested, to the discomfort of some scientists, that these mystical type experiences that were the ones that led to these lasting improvements in the subject's well-being were in fact indistinguishable from the sort of transformative mystical experiences, including ego death, chronicled in the history and literature of religion. So I only have just a very little bit left, so I'm just to give you a little bit of sense, but I'm just going to share a very brief session with the psilocybin that I think will bring this together. So now I'm going to share with you a recent session which illustrates how Alana is learning how, as she goes towards pain and even death, something is released and transformed. As the session begins, she shares a nightmare in which she fears she is dying, along with a startling new realization. This is Alana speaking. You know how I've always told you that I don't want to live when my mom dies? How life would just be so hard, too sad. This week I realized that if my mom died in a car crash tomorrow, that I'm not ready to die. This feels really new for me. Then we begin the journey. Alana, I'm having a harder time feeling the medicine today, but I am open. There's a part of me, though, that also really wants to just protect myself. A few minutes pass. Alana, now I am experiencing myself as a stone in the river. Even though I am so small and insignificant as a stone, I am affecting the flow of the river. A few minutes later, wow, I can really feel the medicine now. It feels like a higher dose than before. Is that possible? I'm being reshaped. I'm not necessarily the shape of a physical body. I'm being reformed into something new and beautiful. Oh, I love this feeling. As the music shifts to a song with greater emotional intensity, Alana then speaks. Ow, ow. I feel my right eye socket being pulled up by a rope. Oh no, it's pulling me up. It hurts. Ouch. The rest of me is just like clay. I've been feeling so good, so peaceful. And now this violent thing that's taken me over and it's pulling me by my eye socket. They're hurting me. Ow. It really hurts. Why is this happening? It's pulling up my head off the pillow and I'm just hanging by it. It's so painful. There is just some force in the air. Alana then speaking in a really defeated manner. Why can't I catch a break? Susan, Alana, I'm right here. Can you stay really close to the pain? Trust the medicine and let it guide us. After a few minutes, she settles and speaks. They have finally, they have let me go. And I have now landed on the ground. I'm lying on the grass. I'm dying. Oh my God, I'm more broken than before. I know I always say that I want to die, but I don't want to die this way, by being attacked. And I don't want to be suffering. I'm going to die. I'm bleeding out of my eye socket. Susan, Alana, can you just stay with it? Alana, again after a few minutes. Oh no, now I'm not panicking anymore. I can't believe it, but I think I'm transitioning into glowing light. Oh my God, I feel like a light beam. As the session ends, she begins to slowly come out of it. She's still quite groggy, but she speaks. Alana, I know that we are eventually released from suffering when we die. I've never thought about this before, but I guess I don't have to be stuck forever. When I die, I will be released. This feels important. Holotropic states, a term coined by the psychiatrist Stan Groff to describe states of consciousness that have healing, transformative, and evolutionary potential, have played a critical role in the ancient sacred mysteries and secret rituals of death and rebirth in the ancient world. In his book, The Way of the Psychonaut, he writes, the key to the powerful transformation that the initiates experienced in the course of the Eleusinian mysteries was the sacred potion, the Kikion, capable of inducing visions of the afterlife, so powerful that it changed the way participants saw the world and their place in it. They were freed from the fear of death through the recognition they were immortal souls, temporarily in mortal bodies. So those participants in Roland Griffith's end-of-life anxiety studies at Johns Hopkins discovered, and Alana did too, this same liberating truth. As we begin to recover the sacred in Alana's painful life, we are also reclaiming other lost gifts. Song lines of my ancestors have emerged, compelling me to reach down to the root voice, to learn its sounds and melodies to guide us on this unfamiliar journey. Dreamtime is often thought of as an Australian Aboriginal phenomena, though there is an Irish dream time, and its Celtic songline teaches that out of a healed past, a healed present will grow. This long forgotten memory of how we heal that flows through, not I, but the wind that blows through me, is what I aspire to share with Alana in the energetic field. So this is my conclusion. I offer this presentation to you this evening as an ashling. It's a Gaelic word that means dream vision, a poem of the dispossessed who are waiting for the feminine healing waters to flow again. Through this process, I have learned more deeply that we carry our ancestors molecularly and suffer without adequate sacred ritual to link, guide, and liberate us through eternal time. In the words of James Baldwin, people are trapped in history, and history is trapped in them. I have thought of the work with Alana as representing the end of a dualistic medical model focused on fixing broken body parts, the end of surviving in pieces. The vision of my thoughts floating in another's water bottle suggested that the time has come to facing into the illusion of separateness, to shift from me to we. I have learned that as I drop into the depth of my own experience of healing through sacred medicine, and Alana willingly meets me in a resonant state, we are no longer bottled up in separate minds, but vibrate together in a state of oneness. If the universe is a sacred, single, unbroken whole, then there is no solo self. If we are all aspects of one living being, my work then is not to fix you, but rather to locate and heal those wounds in myself, and then share the gifts and capacities of that healing in the field. By admitting the strange angels, Alana and I find ourselves in an inner sanctuary where identity is not the same as a tragic biography, a place where she is made whole once again, where both she and I are made whole once again, and whole and full in this great reciprocity. I'm just going to end with a few lines from a poem that has been really important in this work and how I envision what is happening. Not I, but the wind that blows through me. A fine wind is blowing the new direction of time. If only I let it bear me, carry me. If only it carry me. If only, most lovely of all, I yield myself and am borrowed. Thank you. That was the song we were playing. Ended there. Just share here. Okay. Is the sharing stopped?
Yes.
Yeah, stop, Susan. Thank you. I'm just sort of blown away and spellbound simultaneously. But to the practical parts of the question, Arthur, how to ask questions, or can you explain that?
Yeah, just to say briefly, when you want to speak, please indicate this with the raise hand option electronically. Don't physically raise the hand. We are going over 3 screens. It's impossible to keep track of it. So you see at the bottom of the screen when you move your mouse over it, a option, a tab which says raise hands, or sometimes it's hidden behind the reactions button. I do that now for the moment so you just can see what happens. You see then the yellow hand goes up, yeah? And so Chris will know that I want to take part in the discussion. Of course, you also have the option to write something in the chat, not to indicate that you want to speak, but just as a general observations that you might want to share. I think that's all I want to say.
Arthur,
Thank you.
I can't find the raise hand button here. So can I just,
If you use a iPad, then it's sometimes at the top of the screen.
not using the iPad, I'm looking at the emojis, but I can't see a raised hand. So
Can you see a reactions button?
I'm in it. Yeah.
Okay.
On mine, it's next to reactions. It's
Yes.
yeah, the very bottom.
Can you just take it as my hand up then?
Sure, Ruth, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you, Susan. That was a wonderful paper, which I enjoyed a lot. And a few things. I mean, one is that you've referred to all the writers, well, almost all the writers that I refer to in my work on working with spirits. So that was very interesting, including Rachel Yehuda, who I thought was an obscure find that nobody had ever heard of. So that's very interesting.
She's quite known in this. She's quite well known in the psychedelic world with the research with psychedelics. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I, in a sense, what you're doing with this woman is a type of active imagination, isn't it? And I noticed that you didn't kind of refer to it in that way. But I also wondered how she knew about your work with drugs and how she kind of wanted to kind of go along on your journey or alongside on your journey.
Right. So a couple of things. One is I actually don't view it as active imagination. I think I feel like there's, like I said, I think that there is something of like a real living psychic reality that actually there is a, you know, and I recognize some people would say there's a parallel of that in active imagination, but I feel like there's something else that's happening. One of the things that I is that she really is experiencing an experience of being on a psychedelic, that's what's kind of striking. And like I said, she really knew nothing of it. What she did know is, I mean, I've been seeing her for 14 years. So, you know, and I think she had heard, I think she had somehow something came up that I was involved in this field. She couldn't even pronounce the name of psilocybin or what's the M something, or she read something and then she heard I was involved, and so she asked me something about it, and so that's when, and she said, you know, is that something I could do?
Right, yeah. Well, what an incredible client she is. I mean, amazing bravery she shows to throw herself into that work.
Yes, no, really, she's the courage she has been, she's you know, she's shown in this, because your level of anxiety was so high. And I mean, you know, is really, you know, she has been so, you know, since the moment of birth has been poked and prodded, and, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you and congratulations on the piece of work. It really very, very interesting. Yeah.
Your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Thanks. Yeah, thank you, Susan, very much for very interesting and very thought-provoking presentation. I have a question for you, and I hope you might be able to comment on this. So I have read David Nutt's book on psychedelic research at Imperial College. And I think he's been doing some very, very good work in terms of looking at the effects of psilocybin and MDMA on depression and PTSD, respectively. What I was rather disappointed, however, was his chapter on mystical experiences, and he takes what I consider to be a very reductionistic point of view. And what I mean by that is that he seems to very much go along with the notion that brain and mind are interchangeable. So there's a kind of materialistic equation of mind and brain. So my question, Susan, and maybe you'd be able to comment on this, is what might the implications be of your work and what this whole area that you're opening up? in relation to this very materialistic view, because I have struggled with it. I mean, my view, I guess, is very much along the lines that psychedelics do something in the brain that opens the neural pathways up to an other unknown reality. Yeah. Whether we call that God or cosmic consciousness or Brahman or doesn't really matter, but there's something other. But my quarrel with David Nutt's and the kind of traditional scientific paradigm has been this kind of equation of brain and mind. But if I understood your presentation correctly, my sense is that it's kind of questioning that assumption.
So very much so. I'm really questioning this material worldview and this focus on matter. Yes, yeah. And I think, you know, what's interesting is some of the research, if you really look at it too, is actually speaks to this, because some of the research that actually even people like, you know, that they're doing at Imperial College is actually very much in line with what Huxley had said all those in the 1950s.
Yeah.
He had said that he talked about the brain as a reducing valve of consciousness, that our survival adaptation requires us to actually trickle down what the power of a consciousness that we're experiencing, and that the brain is simply this reducing valve. And what is really interesting is with the neurobiological research that's being done with psychedelics is while there is some research that is showing that it actually does stimulate serotonin receptors, the 5-HT2A receptors, but what it really does, it is actually, it inhibits the functioning of the brain. It's not necessarily that it's stimulating it, like I said, some of it, because what it does is it dampens regions of the brain like the default mode network, so that it dampens this part of ourselves that overrides and says, no, I'm this, I'm that, and it allows, and so it allows an experience such as ego death, where you can have experiences where, you know, I mean, you can have experiences where you're like, I'm not even sure where I live on the planet. I'm not sure if I'm a human or I'm an animal, you know, where these realities are as real as anything else. And so actually, so what's very interesting is that actually some of the actual research does actually speak to actually a dampening of the brain. Where kind of, therefore, like what Huxley's saying, is allowing a fuller consciousness to come through.
And just kind of dovetails with the work of Stan Grof as well, when his whole work with LSD in the 1960s, and then his subsequent development of holotropic breathing.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
I saw Rupert Trower's hand come up and then it disappeared. Is it somewhere else on the screen, or have I missed it? Can you see it, Arthur?
Yes, I saw the hands as well going up, Rupert.
Yes, I was attempting to. Susan, thank you. I mean, so many layers are going through my mind, but I really wanted to ask you, because this whole thing around the ancestors, I was very struck by I think you said something like how important the buried wisdom of your own ancestors, and this aspect that we carry our ancestors molecularly, and also this link with Rupert Sheldrake's work on morphic resonance. But I was particularly interested in your experience of where, I suppose, the past is still living in the present, and that our ancestral lines and lineages going back centuries, how they perhaps are something to do with the whole process of this unus mundus idea that we are constantly, as it were, adding to the totality of our human evolution and growth and development, as it were, standing on the shoulders of our ancestral family. I hope I'm making sense, but I'd just be really interested in your experience of that and what you feel about the past and the present.
So, what's so interesting is one of the things that this work with psychedelics, though, does is actually challenge that linear view of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a sense that that we, again, this is maybe one of the things that a brain does, is we need to order things into, but what I've found is that in these other these experiences open us to states of mind and dimensions where it is all present right here, right now.
Yeah.
And so in a sense the ancestors are here, and as I as I am, my work aids them and their work aids me. And
so that sounds like that's really been your very direct experience, and in your own personal development too. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's why I wanted, I shared my own experiences, because that's where my authority, I feel like that's what gives me my authority. It's not by reading about it, studying about it. And, it really is by, it's really by a living, breathing experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And,
So it's
and
the heart.
yes, I mean, the trainings were very helpful in terms of, kind of, procedural aspects of it, but the real gifts have come from my own experience and the connection to my own ancestors.
Yes, that's what I was hearing. Yeah, that's really, thank you.
Welcome.
I mean, Susan, I think you need to get a bodyguard, because there's an awful lot of drug cartels that are going to go out of business here.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Just in the chat, Sharon Francesco, maybe you want to ask the question directly?
Well, my accent is what it is, but I was interested in how did you recreate the field of the plant? Is it by, okay, so I have this story that the shaman told me that once you take it, it remains in your body. So do you think the plant in you was helping you to assist in the healing journey or in the processing of the pain of this person you talked about? And also, I would like to hear a bit more about the painful death and the rebirth. What do you mean by that? And thank you a lot. Thank you so much for this beautiful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So those are some really interesting questions. First of all, in many indigenous cultures, they have a very different view than we do here in the West, is that the shaman takes the medicine. The person in need of help doesn't take the medicine. Here we do it because I think we're Westerners and we feel like we have to do something. And again, we're in a very material worldview that we feel like we need to ingest it. But the shaman takes the medicine and travels. And then, and so the person doesn't need to take it. So in a sense, that's closer to what I'm doing, is that the person is not taking the medicine. But as you're saying, is that when you have, what I find is when having had a lot of experience of really, really doing my own dive with these medicines, I can access the state without actually taking it. And how it first began was I started to notice that on a day that was a medicine day, I would start to have the experience before I took it. Like early, I would go out for, I'd go for a walk. I was doing my preparations and I would start to have all kinds of insights happening. And I was thinking, wait a minute, I haven't taken the medicine yet. And then I started to realize, oh, I'm already in the field. I'm in the field ready to enter. And so I already have access to this information. And so, so I recognize too that I do think it lives inside of us. I think it awakens capacities. And so what I'm trying to do is access something that has been awoken once. And I'm trying to share it with her. So this theme of death and rebirth is a really, I think is something that is kind of close to my heart in terms of this work, because I'm very interested in the way that there is a tradition of this in the West, that, rather than going to other indigenous cultures and going to Latin America and other places and other cultures, really the importance for me of drawing on my own culture, my own lineage. And I recognize that this is what in the West, even in the Eleusinian mysteries, these were all rituals of death and rebirth. And the idea that actually in the work with psychedelics is about dying to the old self to allow something new to be born. And that and I think this opportunity to be able, and again, to be able to die to meet the ancestors and to access this wisdom as well. And so I recognize that what ancient mystics were doing throughout time was this, that they were learning to die to themselves, die to the ego. And I think with this patient, her whole life was this very material view of, she always wants somebody to fix it, and even in the work with me, so much of the work has been trying to transform this idea of just fix it. Can't you just fix it? I hand myself over to you and you fix it. I hand myself over to you, you fix it. And so I think that was one of the deaths too, is the death of the medical model as well.
Rob Harper, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Susan, for your talk. I wanted to ask, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey with the countertransference and your irritation with your client. And this locked door was a very powerful image. And I wondered how your journey with her, with these psychedelic fields, how that impacted your journey with the countertransference.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for that. It was a really interesting process. I think I said in it too. I really started to feel this shame that I was so irritated. And when you're with somebody who's had such suffering, and then I'm feeling irritated, and it's really been a profound gift for me, and I've really recognized it in all my work now of how valuable it is that when I'm irritated, I recognize, oh, and now I get it, because something isn't off. It's like irritation is a rub, and there's a rub. And what I would get often with her was this false niceness, or false hope or false positivity, or when she'd start saying, oh, well, maybe I'm just a blessed child of God. And I knew it was like she was just trying to pump herself up in some way because she's been so put down in life. And I recognized it was bypassing all the other things that we needed to go through. I would find myself irritated. And I realized it was trying to, she didn't know how to own her anger. She didn't know how to own her aggression because she has always been done to, and she can't afford to alienate anybody because she needs people to help her. So you can't express anger or aggression. And so I recognized that I think my irritation was also because those emotions had gone underground. And the way that I'm working is, if I'm working energetically, blocked emotions are going to block the field. They're locked doors. And it's like the field has to be open and cleared. And if there's any emotion that isn't being dealt with or tried to be made nice, it's going to block the field. And so I had to look at any part of myself where I was trying, or I'd try to say, oh, I don't like being irritated because I feel like I'm being a jerk. And so I was like, no, go pass through your irritation, Susan, pass through it. Like she has to pass through her anger because there's something here for both of us. And that cleared the field and allowed a sharing.
Could I just ask, did you sort of name that with her, or was it just internal work?
You know what? She asked me to read the chapter to her. And I was a little worried because I talked about my irritation, but we had been talking about it. And I think she couldn't have heard it years ago, but she could hear it. And and that was, I started to talk about it with her, about the way that maybe she, the way she could not afford to alienate people. And so she had to push those emotions underground.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Thanks.
I think we're kind of at the time, guys, aren't we? Is this the kind of time we finish? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Shavombo has just suddenly entered the scene. Is it a quick question? You need to unmute.
Yes, I think it's a quick question. Well, I don't know. I can try.
Right.
I don't know, it just popped into my mind if you would say a few words about intuition in relationship to the field and our sort of felt sense of what's there, what we might be picking up on then.
Well, I have to say, I think the work what it's done for me is really helped me to really trust intuition. And I view it a little differently now. I view it as my animal. I know, like I have an animal, and it's a little like an animal smells something. Like I often feel like I'm an animal tracking a scent. Like I'm smelling something, I'm following it, and I don't always know what it is. But when your intuition tells you something, and somebody says it's not there, and you're like, I may not know exactly what it is, but I know I'm smelling something.
Yeah.
And so I view my intuition now almost in a way that is a sense of like an animal knowing, which is what the medicines has opened up, I think.
Yeah. And it's that closeness, that closer connection between an animal sense and a sort of spiritual sense. I mean, the veil is thinner, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Great talk. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you so much.
Okay. I think we draw a line here. As much as I regret saying this, I feel like we could go on forever, Susan. You've opened up these vistas, and my God, thank you very, very much. I'd like we all join together and clap in appreciation. And I guess need to unmute to do that, do we?
Yes.
How does this work? I feel like I'm
It's a real
machine.
pleasure for me back at age. It's extra special for me. It does feel like homecoming. So I love being able to share it.